First, I want to talk about the caravel, a vessel I didn't fully understand until I dove deep into research for this video. In the 1440s, the caravel wasn't just a ship. It was a secret weapon suspended between continents and the unknown, bridging the enclosed old world with uncharted oceans. In this video, I use modern AI tools to bring historic engravings and maps to life, letting us shift perspectives, zoom into cabins, and move through scenes in ways the original artists could never have imagined. With 3 square sails, a curved rudder, and a sleek hull carved from Portuguese pine, it looked from afar less like a boat and more like an arrow shot into the ocean's darkness. This was the key tool of the Age of Discovery, unlocking the European maritime era. The caravel sliced through narrow waves battling storms while harnessing fierce currents below, turning every voyage into a high-stakes gamble. So how did the maritime era propel Europe to world dominance in the 16th century from these tiny ships? Today, from Reconstruction History, I'm Robert Langdon, and I'll give you the answer in the minutes ahead. Before ships bearing the cross cleaved the Atlantic waves, the European world was a closed island amid the continent's heart. They lived hemmed in by stone city walls amid village plains and cathedrals where church bells tolled more regularly than the ocean waves most had never heard. From the towers of Florence or Paris, the horizon ended at mountain ridges, not the sea's edge. To most, the ocean wasn't a gateway to new worlds. It was the brink of oblivion. The maps of that era were strangely haunting the Mediterranean, meticulously charted, while the beyond vast blue ink smears remained blank spaces, scrawled with trembling Latin hic sunt dracones, here be dragons. On Portugal's shores, fishermen gazed at the horizon, still convinced that sailing too far would plunge them off the world's edge. For millennia, this rhythm repeated endlessly. Medieval Europe sowed wheat, collected taxes, prayed, and waged crusades that always ended on solid ground. Rich trade routes from Venice and Genoa to the east suddenly snapped shut when Constantinople fell in 1453. Spices, silk, and gold dreams of the Orient became luxuries once more. The world shrank suffocating like a room without windows, yet in the shipyards of Lisbon and Seville, a new scent mingled with the acrid tang of wood and pine tar, the aroma of change. Under flickering torchlight, square sails, curved rudders, and weathered hand-drawn maps were refined by sweat-soaked hands and eyes ablaze with doubt about the Earth's limits. Then, in the late 1400s, the old rhythm shattered. One summer from Portugal's Tagus harbor, ships smaller than a church set sailbows, pointed south along Africa's coast, a darkness Europeans believed stretched to the map's very edge. No one knew what awaited beyond. They only knew they couldn't turn back. For the first time in history, the thirst to pierce the horizon outweighed the terror of falling off the world. No ship sets sail on a whim. The ocean opens only when the land grows stifling, when pent-up desires in medieval Europe's heart find a way to break free. Amid church bells and gunpowder smoke of the post-Crusade era, 6 winds took shape. They blew from different directions: greed, knowledge, faith, power, ideas, and geography, converging on Portugal, that tiny edge of the continent. 1. The hunger of stomachs and purses. In the 15th century, Venice and Genoa's damp streets still reeked of spices, pepper, cinnamon, cloves. Every grain reaching Europe crossed thousands of desert miles, only to be severed by the Ottoman Empire. Europe was addicted to the East, addicted to flavor's gold tales of lands of milk and honey. When the old Silk Road slammed shut in 1453, scarcity spread like famine across the continent. In Lisbon's taverns, a new vision took hold. If the East won't come by camel, let it arrive on the wind. From those drunken murmurs, a new world began to stir. 2. When stars and compasses took turns guiding. At windswept Sagres Point, Prince Henry the Navigator, though he rarely left land, built a strange outpost by the sea. There monks, shipwrights, astronomers, and sailors redrew the world together. Walls hung with goatskin maps. Outside, stood lightweight, sturdy caravel frames, the vessels that would free humanity from ocean dread. As Algarve nights fell, they read the stars like scripture. Compasses spun in hands, Polaris gleamed above. For the first time, humans measured faith by the slant of starlight. 3. Faith and crowns, the twin masters of the seas. Beyond church bells rose royal trumpets. Portugal and Spain, after centuries expelling the Moors, needed fresh battles to define victory. The ocean became faith's battlefield, where spreading God's word meant expanding territory. When Columbus knelt before Queen Isabella, he sought more than gold. He promised souls for Christ. In Granada's freshly reconquered palace, amid candlelight on armor, that vow made a kingdom shudder with belief that God awaited beyond the waves. 4. Merchants, the explorers without swords. A new class rose in Europe, traders in futures. No medals, no oaths to kings, but they wielded something deadlier than armies' capital. From Antwerp to Lisbon, merchants bet their lives on sea voyages, calculating ounces of silver, sharing profits per hull. States sponsored. Merchants invested a template that birthed the massive East India companies. To them, the ocean wasn't faith's test, but profit's trial. Yet they laid capitalism's foundation from contracts scribbled by wind-shaking hands. 5. The Renaissance, when humans dared to wonder. In Florence's quiet rooms, Leonardo sketched birdwings. In Seville, others redesigned sails. Different images, same essence, the thirst to understand and soar. Renaissance thought ignited belief that the world wasn't fixed. If humans could draw bodies, explain motion, measure stars, why not reclaim Earth's edge? On old maps, where "here be dragons" once warned, faint green lines appeared, markers of direction, turning threats into promise. 6. Portugal, continent's edge, future world's heart. From Lisbon rooftops, the sea rolled like endless blue canvas, awaiting the brush. Portugal was poor, small, lacking vast plains or buried treasures. But it had position a spear tip thrust seaward. Tiny ships strung out through Tagus mouth in dawn mist, gleaming under red-crossed white flags. Behind lay sleeping Europe. Ahead, an unmapped world. They didn't know their destination, only that staying meant never knowing. These 6 winds of hunger, knowledge, faith, ambition, ideas, and geography merged into history's storm. Like wind meeting sail, they needed just one spark, a human bold enough to go. When the 6 winds from land converged, all it took was one spark to ignite the ocean. That spark flared at Sagres Point, where Prince Henry, dubbed the Navigator, though he rarely left shore, turned fear into strategy. No plunging into endless darkness. Advance step by step, mile by nautical mile. From 1415, his small ships hugged Africa's coast like cautious thieves. They traded cloth for gold dust, redrew jagged shorelines, built stone forts amid deserts. Each voyage pushed just hundreds of miles farther than the last, a tedious but relentless method. By 1488, Bartolomeo Diaz rounded the Cape of Storms, where winds roared and waves shattered wooden hulls. Africa was no longer an impenetrable wall. A path to the Indian Ocean cracked open, beckoning bolder dreamers. But Africa's circuit remained distant, deadly. A faster way was needed. Christopher Columbus, the stubborn Genoese with premature silver hair, had the answer: sail straight west across the Atlantic. In 1492, 3 modest ships, the heavy Santa Maria, Nimble Pinta, and Nina, departed Palos de la Frontera. Under Andalusia's blinding sun, Columbus believed Asia lay just thousands of miles away, based on Ptolemy's flawed ancient maps. After 33 days adrift, as mutiny growled and water dwindled, a lookout cried from the mast, "Land." They beached on Caribbean sands, where naked natives greeted them with arrows and smiles. Columbus dubbed them Indians, still convinced he'd reached India. No spices, no silk, just gold flecks and whispers of distant Inca empires. Yet in one magnificent mistake, the world doubled in size. The knot wasn't fully untied. Columbus found only wild islands. The true spice route lay beyond. Vasco da Gama Lisbon's rugged son would finish the job. In 1497, 4 full-sailed ships left the Tagus, braved the Cape of Storms, and crossed the hellish Indian Ocean. They docked in Calicut in 1498, where Indian merchants gaped at these ragged Europeans laden with spices on deck. Lisbon erupted when da Gama returned. Pepper prices halved in one voyage. Portugal became the first maritime empire from Lisbon to Goa, Mozambique, to Malacca, a blood-red web across the world map. Then came the pinnacle. Was the earth truly round? Ferdinand Magellan. Portuguese in Spanish service took the challenge in 1519. 5 ships squeezed through Patagonia narrows like a knife blade, then lost themselves in the Pacific's vastness, naming it Peaceful Sea, from thirst, not calm. They reached the Philippines, where Magellan fell under poisoned arrows. But the Victoria, last ship standing, limped into Seville in 1522 with 18 survivor spices and irrefutable proof. Earth was a sphere. In just 3 decades, from Sagres to Magellan's straight dominoes toppled with a roar. Each voyage untangled the last's knot, unveiling new horizons, unwittingly redrawing humanity's borders. But as white sails docked in Europe, laden with gold and spices, a quiet question rose from the depths. What did this bigger world bring to those who once lived peacefully there? White sails didn't just bring spices and gold dust to Europe. They unleashed a flood of change where money poured like rivers, classes upended, and millennia-old rhythms shattered under oceanic pressure. Lisbon gleamed under the sun, Seville drowned in festivals, but behind the dazzle shadows stretched from Caribbean sands to Amazon jungles. Picture a 1500 morning on the Tagus River. Hundreds of ships packed the harbor decks, heaped with pepper cinnamon cloves. Luxuries once worth their weight in gold, now cheap as toast. Dutch and English merchants jostled among grimy sailors' ledgers, fluttering as they tallied Indian voyage profits. King Manuel I hosted lavish banquets tables draped in Chinese silk, beside sweet Madeira wine, while Turkish coffee, South American potatoes, and Mexican cocoa slipped into breakfasts for peasants and nobles alike. The ocean transformed Europe's diet from dried fish and wheat to a global feast. At Lisbon and Seville's hearts, a new class rose like a tide: ocean merchants. No grim stone castles for these fleet owners enriched by sea risks. Their homes sprouted riverside terracotta roofs, blazing under Andalusian sun windows, framing ports where ships arrived from every horizon. Children studied math and geography instead of hunting. Wives and husbands donned shimmering Panama pearls. Here, banks took root, joint stock companies sprouted capitalism's seeds, germinating in salt spray and sea wind. Yet stoop to narrow streets around fish markets, and the picture darkens. Portuguese peasants, once scraping by on wheat and dried cod, now toiled 16 hours in salting sheds or shipyards. Land shifted to export grapes, spiking food prices. Former fishermen became sailors half-free, on waves half-slave under captains' whips. Lisbon doubled in size in 2 decades, streets choked with smoke and dust plagues, racing like fire through damp timber. Now crossed to the Atlantic's far shore, where the New World turned hellish under scorching sun. On Hispaniola, Taino villages once shaded by coconut palms lay in ashes. Columbus brought 1,500 men, but within years native numbers plummeted from hundreds of thousands to thousands, felled by European smallpox and measles like a reaper's scythe. Gold scraped from rivers by bare hands, slaves dropped dead beside mine shafts. Friar Bartolomé de las Casas witnessed it. They dumped bodies in rivers like trash waters, gold muddied with blood and sweat. Mexico quaked as Cortés razed the Aztec Empire in 1521. Tenochtitlan, the lake city's gleaming pyramids, crumbled to rubble temples reborn as churches. Natives forced into encomienda systems, forced labor masked as Christian protection. Potatoes and corn fattened Europe. America exhausted itself with vast sugarcane plantations, soil cracking under leather lashes. The contrast cuts sharp victors ablaze losers in abyss. Lisbon merchants built riverside villas, Seville nobles cast Columbus in gold. Europe flooded with cheap sugar tobacco cotton, turning daily meals luxurious. Meanwhile, Portuguese peasants starved amid price revolution inflation from American silver. New World natives lost land culture lives. A Taino chief told Las Casas, "Before white men came, we knew no iron. Now we do its chains." As dawn broke over the Tagus, Europe grew richer than ever, but traded for millions of souls on distant beaches. The world connected, yet not everyone shared the feast. Iberia blazed the trail with caravels, but the ocean was too vast for two brothers alone. The flame of exploration spread like the trade winds sweeping in England, Holland, and France latecomers who learned fast, turning the Atlantic into a battlefield of taut sails and thundering cannon. Picture London in 1600, Thames fog cloaking massive oak ships. Queen Elizabeth, the pirate queen, unleashed Francis Drake to plunder Spanish gold, birthing the English East India Company in 1600. This people's shareholder machine devoured Japanese spices and Chinese tea, transforming Jamestown swamps into Virginia tobacco mines that sustained an empire. Holland, land of dikes and cheese, flipped ocean terror into supremacy. The VOC 1602, world's first joint stock company, launched 200 warships to seize Batavia and dominate the Indian Ocean with nets and cannon. Amsterdam sparkled like a new Venice, canals brimming with Asian silk. France took the smarter path. Champlain founded Quebec amid Canadian pine forests in 1608, bartering beaver pelts for Bordeaux wine, weaving colonies from Louisiana to Montreal through native marriages and missionary zeal. And that's the answer to our big question. From Lisbon's tiny caravels, Europe rose to 16th century world dominance through joint stock companies and risk insurance machines that turned sea winds into gold. England and Holland overtook exhausted Iberia. Asia teamed with merchants, Africa became slave depots, North America split along ocean coasts. Yet every sail carried shadow. Millions of natives vanished so coffee and potatoes could grace your table today. I am Robert Langdon from Reconstruction History. From map dragons to global empire, the age of discovery's journey ends, shocked by the true cost of our modern world. Hit subscribe and comment. Caravels changed everything. Let's reconstruct more history together. I will see you in the next eras.